How do, Chris, Christine, Jess? It's me, Pikey. See, it says it up there. Look, see there, it says it. That's how I know it's me. It's a little video of a flower tanker. Yes, I know, flower, it comes in a tank. Well, I just thought I'd give you a bit more of a explanation of how it works. Right, so I've just started a little bit. This is what we call a blower. Now underneath the truck is somewhere in there, that big red thing, see it's a different colour, that's a compressor. Now that's driven by an extra gear in the gearbox. So I select that gear, and then that engages a little drive shaft which runs that pump but doesn't drive the wagon. So we have a pipe that goes on here, and then that same pipe goes on here because this is now part of the trailer and not the unit. Now the reason why we have to take this off is if we go around the corner it'll go ping, and we don't really like pinging pipes off, it's not good practice. We also have what's known as an Anderson plug. Red, missed my finger, red, black. Red one goes to the positive of the battery, black one goes to the negative on the battery. Now this is actually 24 volts, your normal car's 12, wagons are 24, and all it is two batteries side by side. Now this Anderson plug is also replicated up here, and that's the same, and they are clearly marked positive, negative. Now I have a wire that's the same both ends, so I can then plug that in to run the pump. So these wires on the trailer, they go down here and they come into this box which I've just unlocked, and they're here. So we have the solenoid for the motor. This motor, which isn't very big at all, as you can see, put my hand there, that motor runs a very small pump. From here to here, that's a hydraulic pump. That pumps oil into the ram on the top. That big barrel, that's the hydraulic. Right, that big barrel is the hydraulic tank. Sorry, I got a phone call and we were rudely interrupted. Now this handle, that's what lets the tank back down. So it's electric tip. We press this button in here. We can walk around with it, but we tend not to. And this blue seal, we jam the button so we don't have to stand there and hold it. This is a pressure gauge to tell me how much pressure is in the ram. So we'll carry on down. This is the black pipe from the front. This goes down here, disappears behind these two plastic pipes. Now these two plastic pipes are what's known as pipe rack. So that's got a product pipe, which is a 4-inch cone fitting. That's what the flower flows through. And then here's the jump pipe. Now these two lugs are the same as what was on the trailer and the unit end. They go in this gap and then twist through and then lock in. We now have a rubber pipe, and that goes up to the manifold. Right, so the next thing we have a suspension height control lever and a gauge that you can't really see. Now the springs aren't what you think of a big coily spring like on a car. They're actually air springs or airbags. Now by putting more pressure in, I can adjust the height of the trailer. Now we have legs on the back because the weight transfers to the back when we take the barrel up. Now the problem is the bumper is actually bolted to, I don't know if you can see, to the tank, not the chassis. So the bumper drops down to the floor. So I'll actually have to raise this up a bit before I wind the legs down to the floor. Now, get to the back. So we had that flexible pipe coming up when we hit the manifold, which can look quite confusing. So, what we have here is, we have a handle, the valve. Now the valve's open and that's putting air into the tank, because that's open. So that goes into the bottom of the tank. Now this is shut at the minute. This pipe here just follows down and it goes straight onto the bumper, which doesn't make any sense at all, because why do you want to blow the bumper up? We'll get to that after. And then we have another here. Now that is what we can refer to as the top air. so the sun's just hit my eyes. That goes all the way to the top of the tank. Doesn't just go to the top of the tank, it goes to the front of the tank. Now by the time the air comes out of the compressor and the blower it gets to here, there's a lot of friction involved and it heats up, so we get hot air. So we put hot air in the bottom of the tank through this pipe. Now if we were to use the top air, by the time it gets all the way back to the front of the tank, all that way up, it's cooled down. So that's also known as cold air. Now if we had plastic pellets on, we'd be using the top air because the hot air at the bottom would melt it. So we don't want to melt that. But if we put cold air in the top of the tank for flour, it becomes damp and it becomes moist and the flour will stick to the tank. So we never turn that on. If ever you see a proper flour tank and it's only been built to do flour, it will not have a facility for top air because you're not supposed to use it. Now here we have a safety valve which is actually turned off, because here this safety valve is set to 0.9 bar. We blow here at 1 bar. So just turn it on, turn it off. This gauge tells me how much pressure is in the manifold. This gauge tells me how much air is in the tank. We have a handle product valve at the end, and that's just a blank cap. We'll come to that in a minute. This pipe here is the other blue pipe that goes all the way to the top. This is what's the drain. So that is for emptying the tank at the end when you're finished. It's a bit stiff, I need 2 hands. There's no air in the tank, so I'm not putting any in. Now here, if you can see, we have the tank and we have the back dish. Now in the middle, there's another piece there. There's 2 seals. So we have tank, seal, metal, seal, dish. Now that dish is what's known as a fluidizing ring. So that's the shape of this. Now the air goes into the dish, hits that plate, and then is directed back down here to the valve, and the air is forced upwards. So that keeps the flour moving around the valve, and it stops all the pressure in the tank compacting it on the valve and stops working. Right, that's it for the time being. I shall be back in a moment. Right, we're back and we've moved into the cab now. Now if you can see here in the middle of the dashboard, this is how many minutes I've driven since my last break. It's how many minutes I've driven across the entire day. This is how many minutes I've driven across the week, and this is other things like that to show how many minutes rest I've had. This is what I want to show you. This here says A for automatic, and this is my gear selection. Now we have neutral, we have neutral 2, because the gearbox has a low range and a high range. Is it right? This is a 12-speed gearbox in this, so it has 6 low gears, 6 high gears. The computer sorts all that out, so it would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in low, and then it'd go 1 high, which would be 7 normally. Some of them are different, but that's basically how that'd work. Now here we have indicator stalk, it's covered in flour as normal. Now if I handbrakes on, so can't go anywhere, if I roll this into D for drive, that's now changed to 2. Like a sports car, I can flip it up, 3, 4, and I can go back down the box by pushing it away. Now put it back to neutral, put it in reverse, reverse 1. I can select reverse 2 if I'm going a bit further and want to go a bit quicker. We also have a button on the end, so if we press that, that changes it. See the little M or A, so I can drive it manually or automatic. I'll just turn the wheel a bit to get a bit of a better view. Now I've got lots of switches and dials and buttons and all sorts on here, but what we want to do is this one. Now try and zoom in a bit better. Right, now this, if you can just sort of picture it, they're the front wheels of the wagon because that's steering around the corner, and they're the back wheels because they're facing straight. Now this says 1. It's got a little block, little round blob attached to the side of the chassis, sticking out. Okay, now that's PTO 1. It only has one PTO, this wagon, but there are different wagons that have extra PTOs. PTO is power takeoff. That's the extra gear in the gearbox. So now, let me point that there. All I'm going to do is press this button. I'm not going to touch any pedals or anything, but watch the dashboard and watch the rev counter. Buttons in, screen's changed. You wouldn't have felt that, but there was a little shudder from the wagon as it's now gone into gear. And the computer is gradually building the revs up because we don't want to shock the compressor. Now there's a pedal on the floor there so I can move the steering wheel. Right, so there we go. We'll just jump out and show you. Right, so if you can hear now, that pipe's on, tank's gone. Now that blower is producing air. Now you can see there's a bit of pressure in the air. There's that wire I was on about. And I'll do a bit more and start another video. All hooked up, and what we refer to as we're blowing. Now, do you remember the pipe that I said comes down and blow the bumper up with? Well, that's just the transport position. Now it's gone onto the back of this elbow. Now what's happening is the force in the tank in here, there's my finger, is forcing the flour down and out. Now it'd block up in this pipe, so now we direct some of the air down the back of it to force it up. Now this little window, it's known as a sight glass, which is wrong because it's perspex, but they just refer to sight glasses. And then that then goes into there. Now all these are locked, so the storesman has to unlock it. Now we should have done this before, this is a bit of a bad video. That is an earth strap, because flour, believe it or not, is highly explosive. Now you might think that's a bit daft, but what it is because it's going at high air pressure, see it flying through, it's actually very fine. If it was to suddenly leak, it's quite in a very fine mist almost. And because flour will essentially burn, you've got the particles are so small and so fine, they're surrounded by oxygen. And because there's so much oxygen per atom of flour, it's the oxygen really that burns around that. So if there was a static spark, the oxygen would use the flour as its little bit of fuel and cause like a big flashover. You get a big, huge explosion, but it'd be a flash fire because it'd burn everything so quickly. And it's the energy of suddenly just burning that. We'll just tip the tank a bit higher. Right, now, so I'm putting flour into the tank now. I'm not putting flour in at all, I'm putting air into the tank by this. And this one is what's known as the boost pipe. So if there's too much air going into the tank, you want to start reducing the air that you're putting in. So what you can do is you open this more and more. One of these valves needs to be open fully all the time. So if the pressure goes too high, the more we open this, the more air coming down the line, which means less of the air that's being produced by the truck is going into the tank. Now my tank is much better than this one. It holds pressure much better, all the seals are better, but that's back at the mill loaded with something else. Now mine would be set something like that. A lot of drivers can't understand this and they start letting air out of the tank and all sorts. But all they're doing is just wasting air that they're trying to produce. It's very basic to think of it. If you think of the tank as your bath and you've put too much cold water in the bath, so now you're trying to top it up, with hot water. So if you think of the flour as cold water and the air that's going in as hot water, it's going to mix. Now if the bath's full of cold water, you need to pull the plug out, which is this, and you're letting the flour or the cold water out, and you're putting more hot in. Now if you're putting the water into the bath quicker than the plug's letting it out, and you're in your house, would you run round and turn all the hot taps on in the house to slow the water flow down, or would you start closing the tap? You'd close the tap in a bath, and that's the easiest way to think about it. Right, there we go. Obviously there's a lot more to that. This isn't a training video. I wouldn't like to send you out now. You need somebody with you just to give you a bit of guidance, but that's in essence how hard it is. Now I carry a deck chair, and in the summer I'll sit down, play on YouTube and stay here. I just need to monitor these gauges at the back to make sure the tank pressure doesn't get too high, and I'm also able to quickly shut the pipe off, shut that valve off. That's like the plug in case the pipe comes off, pipe burst, you come screaming out into the bakery because it's spilling out somewhere, the pipe burst, because I'm actually by the silos here. If you can see how tall they are, these silos are 60 tonners. So normally when I come here there's at least 35-40 ton of room in, and I'll bring around about 27 ton each time, so there's always more than enough room. When they get cleaned out, which they do, they have to send men in, the abseil down from the top to scrub the sides. We'll then generally bring 2 loads in that day, because they do pull off it. That's why we refer to it, pulling flour from it. They do that most of the time. Now if you can see, now the silo is round all the way to the bottom, but there's a door there. Inside that door is a little compartment underneath, and the silo is actually tapered down a bit like how my tank is now. You can see the way it's cover my shoulder. Where are we? Ooh. So there we go. See how it's tapered down to a little point? That's what the silo's like inside. And there is also a tiny little room at the top. That's where the filters are, because obviously the air I'm putting in needs to come out of the top of the silo, otherwise we blow the silo up like a big balloon. That would be bad. That would be very bad. So there's filters in there to make sure no flour comes out. There's also what's known as an explosion lid on the top. So if ever the pressure gets too great in there, that'll burst open. That'll be a big repair bill. We don't want to do that. Touch wood. Never have done. A big way that happens is, if you can see that the flour that's coming down there's not a lot of air going down it, because the flour in the pipe's restricting how much air goes behind it. Now if that flour disappears, all the air in that tank up there will just whoosh out, whoosh down the pipe with a big whoosh, and then there'll be a great big boom and the top of the silo will come off. Yeah, I have seen the results of it. It makes a mess, and that's putting it mildly. Also, a little point, if I make a mess, my pipe comes off, it's me that brushes it up, even in the rain, so it's me scraping the dough up. I think that's about it. I think we've pretty much covered everything. Packing it up here is just a reversal, and that's about it. Oh, just the only thing that I didn't show you on. We're now going down the other side of the tank. There's another pipe rack, so that's holding more product pipes in case we park further away from the silo. Then we just have a little toolbox, little tool locker that keeps the filter in, the cone. This is a different type of fitting than we've used today, and that's pretty much that. I hope this video is a bit similar to the way you've shown us your car. As always, any questions, just get in touch. There is another video to follow showing how this site has its own axle weighbridge, so I weigh each axle at a time. I forgot to, well, to be fair, I didn't think to do it on the way in. So I've already done the start of that little video showing the printed out weighbridge ticket of the truck loaded, and then I'll do you a little photograph of the weighbridge ticket as I leave, and I'll do you a video of me driving over the bridge just so you can see how it works. Okay, hope you're all well and you're not getting too bored now. I did see a post before where it's the dog talking to his owner, and the dog says, "See, you've only been stuck inside a week, now you know why I chew all the furniture." Yeah, I was barking mad and I was only in 2 days at weekend. Okay, I hope you're well and I hope these videos are continuing to entertain you. Bye.